Who has the first question? Yes.
I have a question about languages and reading and writing, leaving nations that have left Christianity. Like, what are examples of that?
That have left Christianity, or?
Yeah, you said whenever Christianity leaves, there goes the reading and the writing. And I just wondered if you had examples of that.
The United States of America.
So we don't read. I guess I just need more.
We're graduating functional illiterates out of college now. Some of you may be familiar with, what's his name? He wrote the book in the 1830s, came over here. Oh, no. He's an English guy. Oh, come on. That's what happens when you get to Tocqueville. Thank you. John's older than I am, and he can remember this stuff, and I can't anymore. Got to change my diet. De Tocqueville came in the 1830s and was shocked how literate everyone was. Young people reading the newspaper and understanding it and discussing it. Nowadays, we have people that are, we see a world map, and half of them identify Brazil as the United States. Literacy is taking a beating here in this country. Right on schedule. We're not the only ones. Yes?
Support that. I mean, I was reading a book, this was the other year, reading through this incredible theological booklet, and I'm like, oh my word, this is crazy. And I got to the end and saw it was an 1890 high school primer book. And I was struggling to get through it, and I'm sitting there like, this is incredible. This was a high school textbook.
Yeah. If you get a hold of some of these older books, I have one from 1910. It was for 10th graders. And you know what it was? You had to analyze Edmund Burke's argument in favor of conciliation with the colonies. Edmund Burke was a British statesman who argued in British Parliament prior to the war with Britain, the war for independence. He argued against going to war against the colonies. His argument was, look, they're far away, there's a lot of them, they don't want you anymore, let them go. That was his argument. And he argued in Parliament, and back then they could talk for hours. And this particular book, as a 10th grader, you had to analyze Burke's speech and lay it out what his reasons were. And I promise you, we have plenty of college grads today who have never even heard of Edmund Burke, let alone his speech. Not surprising. There's no surprise here. Good question. Other questions? Yes?
John fell down as dead, as a dead man. We see that over and over and over in the Old Testament. All the prophets had a vision of God and were overawed by his goodness, his purity, and fell down as dead. The fear on their part was that they had seen God as sinful men. Isaiah 6, whoa, sure. I'm undone.
Yeah.
Right? Is this the same? I've always read this the same. You intimated that this was more fear.
Oh, no, I think it's exactly the same.
Okay.
I don't think that he's necessarily saying that he's afraid of dying. He's saying he fell at his feet as dead, but he wasn't clearly dead. And that's why I think the picture is that Christ is at the first thing that Christ said then is, I was dead, but I'm alive. So that's, I think, the picture there. Not so much that he was afraid he was going to die necessarily. Although we do have some issues with him, poor John, because later in the book, of course, he wants to worship an angel, of course. So he did. It's hard to tell exactly what was happening there. But I think the point is Christ is making it really clear. As I said, he's in charge of who's dead and who's not. Otherwise, I don't think he'd say, I fell at his feet as if I was dead. That's what I'm thinking there. You had a question, Beth?
So in the beginning, you were talking about God's sovereignty and how this book really points us to that, and then the weather and the events that have been happening recently, and, of course, now we have people out there saying, well, this is God's judgment for, and listing what it's for. And do you remember when we lived in this city, the Christar house was across from us, and there's a couple there that we still hear from that are in Albania. He has started a ministry, which I can't remember, Antecessor something. He believes, I'm just curious about your take on this, he believes that all of these natural disasters, godly natural disasters, are God's way of dispersing his people to places where his word is not known. And that, so his ministry now, he's building this first responders ministry to send people wherever these events happen to help, but to share the gospel. It's just an interesting and different take on, we normally hear this is a judgment of God, this is the judgment of God. I don't know, I wonder what you think about that.
Well, we do know that Book of Acts tells us that at least the persecution was used that way. Those who were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. So we know that happened, at least from the persecution. This question of what, is this a judgment of God or not or whatever, is a little more difficult. We're going to deal with that in the next Mars lecture. We're going to talk about monuments and judgment. One of the things we're going to be talking about is something that doesn't get talked about as much, and this is what I can identify more as judgment. Throughout the scriptures, especially the Old Testament, we see that one of the ways God judges people is he takes away people that are discerning. He takes away their prophets, if you will. And again, he says that you're going to have people that can't tell you anything. Now, that's something that is a little more obvious to me, because it seems we have less and less people that can discern the times and preach the scriptures and tell us what's happening. And for example, right here, you have less and less people that can even read. And I'm seeing this politically in a large sense. See if I can explain it this way. It's going to be kind of hard to explain. Have you ever watched a kind of a third world election? Ever seen that? It's very intriguing. Third world election is one of those interesting things. They get out there. Watch this sometime. You see, some third world, they got an election. They get out there with their signs, and most of the time, they just have a picture of their candidate. Now, we at least still have slogans. But it used to be when people could actually read a little bit, they read things like the Federalist Papers, right? They've been insulted by a bumper sticker. So I'm a lot more understanding, if you will, of that type of judgment that we can really, really see in front of us. As far as the natural disasters are concerned, we know it's never really just a natural disaster. We do know that Christ is in charge of every square inch of every single storm that's ever been, because we saw that shocking, and I still believe to this day that the disciples would have been shocked to see Lazarus come out of the grave. They would have been shocked to see some of these people like walking again. I still believe the most shocking miracle of all would have been that wind and waves thing that happened. Shocking. I mean, people get better sometimes, right? And maybe somebody even that we thought was dead maybe is not really dead. But nothing like this they'd ever even heard of before. So we do know that God is in charge of everything. We do know that he calls us to repent. The heavens declare the glory of God. All of creation shouts his name, all of that. And when we do know that the storms and the hurricanes shout his name every bit as much as the nice days. That all we do know. Beyond that, I'm always a little tentative to say specific judgment, if you will. Although we do know at the same time that Sodom and Gomorrah was no random act. Yes?
Just to comment off of that, at least he's going to share the gospel.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than UNICEF and the Red Cross and all these pagan organizations that are, out of their, whatever you want to call it. That's where I think at least we sometimes as Christians fail. We're so busy talking about myself
Yeah.
here. I'm so busy, Monday through Friday, you know, I can't just pack up and go to Florida and help these people and share the gospel.
Right. Yeah,
Because
I agree.
I'm too busy.
Right,
But at least he's doing that,
yeah.
so.
Yeah. Good. If it's getting done, it's good, no matter how it gets done, right? Well, thank you for your kind attention here this morning.